Priyau Priyakarau Nirmasanau Pujitau Sri Chaitanya Kripa Bharau Bhubi Bhuva Bharavahantarakam Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghujagam Sri Jiva Gopalakam Krishna Chaitanya Ganana
Kūrma Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajunulambito Bujo Kanakabhatatu Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavatāro Vande Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gurudaya Pushpavanto Chitra Sangdo Tamono Vandeham Śrī Rāma Krishna Abhayo Charanasako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subalapriyo Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye.
Shri Gaudiya Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai, Shri Jiva Goswami Ki Jai, Sat Sandarbhas Ki Jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Glorious devotees, thank you for attending another reading from Shri Jiva Goswami's Sri Krishna Sandarbha. We continue today with our discussion of the fourfold army of the Paribhasa Sutra. Again, now we are in the fourth Sandarbha, the Krishna Sandarbha, and this entire Sandarbha is centered upon the statement Krishnastu Bhagavān Svayaṁ from the Bhagavatam's 3rd chapter, 28th verse. So at this stage in his presentation, Sri Jiva Goswami is now fortifying the position of the emperor's statement of the Srimad Bhagavatam with a whole army in support, and that army has 4 divisions, and we are now discussing further the first division with a couple additional anuchetas, and those are all supportive statements from the Bhagavatam. So as a reminder, excuse me, Sri Jiva Goswami pointed out in the Anucheta of this first division in the fourfold army that now, and this is a very nice statement, yet just to augment the pleasure of the audience by a display of unique splendor, I will now cite other verses as well that are like the emperor's supporting fourfold army. So up to this point, he dealt with various statements that could be seen, and he presented them in the typical Indian style as the arguments or an opposing statement from scripture or from a Leela narrative of scripture, wherein the comprehensive understanding of Krishna being Svayaṁ Bhagavān could be questioned. And he dealt with those quite comprehensively. And now he's giving some sweetness in his presentation, and this sweetness will continue throughout the remainder of the Krishna Sandarbha. And if we look at the overall, I kind of see in the Sandarbhas, we're in stage Sambandha Gyan, and he's presenting all this Sambandha, and now we're finishing our toolage in Sambandha Gyan, centering on the fact that Krishna is the focus of the Gaudiya tradition. So this is unique, and this acceptance of the Paribhasa Sutra speaks to the uniqueness of our Gaudiya tradition, in that we see this manifestation of the Supreme Lord as the topmost. Not all Vaishnava Sampradayas would agree with this, but for us as Gaudiyas, our whole practice centers around this understanding that Krishna is Svayaṁ Bhagavān. He is the source of all nations. There is a hierarchy in the different displays when the Supreme Lord manifests both in the material world, and there is also a hierarchy in the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha realm itself, of the various manifestations of the Supreme Lord. And this idea itself is sometimes, as Jiva has already brought out earlier when he dealt with some of the opposing arguments, he specifically pointed out a statement by Madhvacharya, wherein Madhvacharya, when looking at the Bhagavatam verse from which we derive this understanding of Krishna being the topmost manifestation, Madhvacharya, he points out in his commentary to that very verse that there is not a fraction of difference between the different manifestations of the Supreme Lord. And Jiva Goswami, of course, took exception to Madhvacharya's statement, and he gave us his firm arguments in support of the Paribhasa Sutra, making it clear that Krishna is the topmost manifestation of divinity. So there's a lot of diversity in the Lord's various worshipers. And even when we look to the Indian traditions and the various sampradayas and the four primary sampradayas as presented there, coming forth into Indian society, their primary Istadeva is of course the Supreme Lord, but the manifestation of the Supreme Lord that they see as topmost, that varies from sampradaya to sampradaya, or with from acharya to acharya, coming through the ages. Certain acharyas may not, their viewpoints are not in harmony with those that have sprung forth through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So his advent is revolutionary in a few ways. And as we've pointed out, and it's worth repeating, that even the idea of the Bhagavat Purana being topmost in scriptural evidence regarding pure devotion, this is unique in the way that the Gaudiyas have brought that out, up to the point of the introduction of the Gaudiya tradition by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The primary scriptural evidence was the Prasthana Trayi, or a comprehensive threefold approach to spiritual evidence as related in the Bhagavad Gita, in a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, and understanding of the primary Upanishads. So even what is put forth, the narration that the author himself puts forth of his revelation, which led to the rewriting of the Srimad Bhagavatam, as pointed out by Sri Jiva in his first Tattva Sandarbha. It was not real. This understanding did not come to the forefront until the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That doesn't mean that it was not there altogether. And the primary evidence to the fact that the significance of the Bhagavatam was understood by a few is the amazing commentary that was presented prior to the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by Sridhar Swami. And his commentary was so much appreciated by Sri Chaitanya himself. And his commentary is so much brought to the fore by Sri Jiva Goswami in the Sattva Sandarbhas. So some interesting points here that we continue to repeat just to make our understanding firm as to the significance of the position of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and what we consider the extraordinary benediction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Golokare Premadan, Harinam Sankirtan. By engagement in the Sankirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this most intimate of understanding is being made available. So this breaking open of the storehouse of love of Godhead by Sri Chaitanya in pursuit of both his external objectives and also his internal desire to relish the topmost appreciation for Sri Krishna. It's quite an extraordinary and glorious thing to be coming even in the wake, of course, like the like others, entering into the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This pastime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is continuing to this very day. And somehow or other, we have been given the extraordinary opportunity to ourselves engage in it in some small way, even though we're coming a few centuries later. So we'll continue. And with the 38th Anucheta, Krishna is the original supreme person. Jiva Goswami writes here, as such, Sri Sukha proclaims Krishna's eternal personhood and also his superiority over all others. I bow down to the original person named Sri Krishna, who is supreme above all. Jiva writes, since it is well known that the name Krishna belongs specifically to him, other forms of God are thereby excluded. By offering obeisances to Krishna, Sri Sukha indicates the eternal self-establishment of his form. Swami Prabhupada also comments in this regard, I bow down to the embodiment of supreme bliss in the form of the son of Nanda Maharaj. The Anucheta continues, in this way, what we conjectured in the discussion beginning from verse 131 onward has been further fortified by Sridhar Swami's concurrence of opinion. Here again, we show his concurrence by the hermeneutic indicator known as repetition, abhasa, as in his comment on the verse spoken by Sri Sukha. After hearing that Jarasandha was undefeated, King Yudhisthira became thoughtful as to the means of his defeat. Then the original Hari, Krishna, described the plan that had previously been proposed by Uddhava. Swami comments, the word original, Ajya, to describe Hari means Sri Krishna. Some commentary in regards to this. In Anucheta 1, Jiva Goswami initiated a discussion about the avatars, leading up to the conclusion that Sri Krishna is Svayaṁ Bhagavān, their original source. He begins by citing verse 131. In the beginning, prior to the cosmic manifestation, the Supreme Personal Absolute, Bhagavan, intending to evolve the cosmos, manifested the form of the Purusha, who was enfolded within him along with the tattvas, beginning with Mahat, and endowed with the 16 evolutionary principles necessary for creation. So as we remember, the way this Krishna Sandarbha is unfolding is in exact, especially in the beginning of the Krishna Sandarbha, it is an unfolding based on an analysis of the beginning verses of the third chapter of the first canto of the Bhagavatam up through the statement of the Paribhasa Sutra, Krishna Stu Bhagavān Svayaṁ, the 28th verse. So Jiva Goswami went through all of the verses sequentially, and he commented on all of them sequentially, bringing out the meaning pointing towards the Paribhasa Sutra. And here, what Jiva's doing is what's being shown here is Jiva's approach, and his conclusions are supported by the great commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sridhar Swami. Commentary continues. Sri Jiva comments that the word Bhagavan in this verse refers to Sankirtan. In 28, however, while discussing verse 1.3.28, where the Paribhasa Sutra resides, he comes to the conclusion that Śrī Kṛṣṇa alone is Svayaṁ Bhagavān and no one else. This view is repeatedly accepted by Sridhar Swami, as shown from his comments cited in Anuchedas 35 and 37. Here again, Jiva Goswami cites Sridhar Swami's concurrence of view while referring to his comment on the principal verse of this Anucheda. Repetition of view, abhashya, is one of the 6 hermeneutic indicators by which an author's intention can be understood. Thus, Jiva Goswami's conclusion that Krishna alone is Svayaṁ Bhagavān is reinforced by Sridhar Swami's concurrence of view discerned through repetition. Now, why Jiva has brought this up is because in that first verse of the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto, the nomenclature Bhagavan has been applied to the Sankirtan manifestation from which the different Paramatma features come. So those manifestations of divinity, the Purusha avatars, those manifestations which come forth from Sankirtan of the Chaturvyuha, those manifestations of Paramatma were referred to by Sutta. The original manifestation was referred to as Bhagavan. So Jiva's just pointing out we need to see things in context, and we need to see this statement by Sutta Goswami in context of the entirety of all of the various discussions related to the manifestations of Godhead, the avatāric descents as presented in the 3rd chapter, up to the Paribhasa Sutra as revealed in the 28th verse, where Svayaṁ Bhagavān is declared as Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa. So others are referred to as Bhagavan. Sometimes even great devotees are referred to as Bhagavan because they have so many magnificent characteristics or empowerment coming from Bhagavan. But we have to understand, of course, such statements in light of the understanding that Jiva Goswami is providing here in his Krishna Sandarbha. Now, this discussion today is if we get all the way through it, is very, very interesting. So let us move on to the 40th Anucheda. Furthermore, Bhagavān Śrī Kṛṣṇa informed Yogamaya, hereafter I, with the totality of all my parts, Haṁsa bhagena, will appear as the son of Devaki, and you, O auspicious one, will appear as the daughter of Yasoda, who is the wife. Jiva Goswami writes, Swamipad has explained the meaning of the compound Haṁsa Bhagavān in numerous ways that all are befitting Krishna's state of utter completion, Purnata. Out of these, one meaning is as follows. The word Amsena through his part means through the Purusha, and the word Bhaga, a portion, indicates the diffusion, Bhajadam, of Maya through the act of glancing, Iksanam. Hence, Haṁsa Bhagavāna signifies he who's glancing, or in other words, whose diffusion of Maya is executed through his partial expansion in the form of the Purusha. Being inclusive of that form, I shall appear as the son of Devaki. In this way, after concluding this elucidation on the 6 meanings of Haṁsa Bhagavāna, Sridhar declares, the compound Haṁsa Bhagavāna is used by Krishna with the intention of informing Yogamaya that he will appear in all respects in his utterly complete form. In keeping with the statement, Krishna, however, is Svayaṁ Bhagavān. What I find exciting in this presentation of Jiva Goswami is the care and attention he takes in presenting his Sandarbhas and in really completely unpacking the meaning and completely finding support for his philosophical conclusions in what's presented by Sridhar Swami in his commentary, where it's available. Now, and in that way, he's giving a real seal of approval to the understanding as put forth by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the understanding, the deep, meaningful understandings that lead to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. We may think that this is, it seems that he's just repeating again and again the same principles, but you'll see as we go deeper and deeper into this Krishna Sandarbha, these principles play out as he begins to bring in the deep understandings of Krishna's name, form, quality, pastimes, associates, and his different residences or the places for his leelas. So all these pieces, he's laying a preliminary groundwork for us. And then as the Krishna Sandarbha moves forward, all these deep insights will have a profound positive effect on our deeper understanding of Krishna, the personality. All of this is coming forth from the personality of Godhead. Krishna is that supreme person, and everything else is in support of his supreme personhood. Because he is the greatest person, all of these qualities that make him Bhagavan spring forth from him. And all of the opulences, the Ishvara that supports the Vaikuntha realm and spills over into his material manifestation, coming forth from his expansions as the Purushas. All this is coming from his magnificent personality. A little commentary here. In his Krama Sandarbha, now the Krama Sandarbha is a commentary on the entirety of the Srimad Bhagavatam by Jiva Goswami himself. So Jiva Goswami, not only do we get the Sandarbhas from Jiva Goswami, we get his own commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krama Sandarbha, and we get another commentary from Jiva Goswami, specifically on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the focus and the unpacking of all, and what else? We get to Gopal Champu, a representation of the most intimate leelas of Krishna from the 10th canto. So Jiva Goswami, so much coming from him in relationship to the Leela of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the message of the Bhagavat Purana. So in the Krama Sandarbha, Jiva glosses Haṁsa Bhagena as follows. This compound signifies one in whom there is participation, or in other words, entrance of all the parts. Basically, as Krishna told Yogamaya, I'm going to appear, and when I appear, I'm going to appear comprehensively, completely. All of my manifestations will be present in this advent as Krishna. We go on to the 41st Anucheta. Similarly, Sri Devaki Devi prayed to Bhagavān Śrī Kṛṣṇa, O self of the cosmos, O original person, today I have obtained shelter of you from but a quantum, bhaga, of a part of the part of whose expansion, the creation, evolution, and dissolution of the cosmos verily proceed. So Devaki making a profound statement. You are the complete original person, and the whole material manifestation is coming from a part of your splendor, a small manifestation of your magnificence. Now, Sridhar Swami comments on this statement from the Bhagavatam as follows. This statement is to be understood as follows. I have obtained shelter of you, whose expansion is the Purusha, a part of whom is Maya, the part of which are the gunas, from but a quantum, bhagena, or in other words, an atomic portion, paramanu matra lesena. Of them, the gunas, the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the cosmos proceeds. So we can see that Sridhar Swami's understanding of this verse in commenting on it and putting forth his understanding, is a comprehensive presentation through commentary on what exactly is being said here by Devaki. So this statement is also coming at the 85th chapter of the 10th canto, is corresponding to the statement at the beginning of the 10th canto made by Krishna himself to Yogamaya, that he would appear completely at that time with all of his different parts. And when we look to the material manifestation, as pointed out here at the end of the 10th canto, all of the material manifestation is just a small display of the Lord's splendor. So you can imagine Devaki's delight at having the entirety of divinity present before her. Some commentary in this regard. In this verse, Krishna is described as the source of the Purusha, who controls Maya, which in turn consists of the three gunas. The act of cosmic creation, sustenance, and dissolution proceed from just an atomic portion of the gunas of Prakriti. Since the Purusha was also described as the source of all the avatars, it is to be concluded that Krishna is the original Bhagavan. Jiva Goswami continues in his Sandarbhas, the 42nd. Krishna is the source of Narayan. In a similar vein, Śrī Rāma prayed to Bhagavān Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Now we get a prayer from the 14th chapter of the 10th canto. Are you not Narayan, the immanent self of all embodied beings, the Lord of lords, and the witness of all creation? Narayan, so called because of being the refuge of the water born from Nara, Garbhodakṣai Vishnu, is your plenary portion. However, your plenary portions are indeed ontologically real, Svayaṁ, and not creations of your Maya. Then again, Jiva Goswami goes to the commentary on this verse by Sridhar Swami, where he comments, the Narayan, who is famed as the refuge of all phenomena, appearing from Nara, or Garbhodakṣai Vishnu, as well as of the water that has emanated from that Nara, is your plenary portion, Angam, or in other words, your form. Jiva then continues, in this regard, the elaborated meaning is as follows. And again, just to bathe in the splendor of Jiva Goswami's elaborate discussions here, his elaborate commentaries in these anuchetas to bring out fully the meaning and completely school us as to how to understand these various statements from the Bhagavad. He is your part, he's paraphrasing the verse, Anga, whereas you are the whole, Angi. This is not mere flattery, stuti matra, because Brahma directly witnessed Krishna's unprecedented glory, as described in the following verse. Then he quotes another verse from the 13th chapter. Brahma felt highly astonished on witnessing the liberation of Aghasura as a consequence of Krishna's exceptional power. Again, we come back to this extraordinary display that Brahma witnessed of Krishna giving liberation to Aghasura. Aghasura's self, and generally the Atma, is not seen. But still, in this particular instance, in Yogamaya's amazing arrangement, it was Aghasura's self, now completely cleansed of all material contamination and ignorance, was able to be seen hovering in the sky until Krishna came out from the dead body of Aghasura, and he merged into the form of Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Jiva continues, it is understood based on the principle thus enunciated that Brahma became astonished to see the liberation even of an evil one such as him, Aghasura, an event never at all displayed by any other avatar or avatāric. Moreover, in the same verse it is said, O best of the Kuru dynasty, in order to behold still other delightful glories of Krishna, Brahma stole away his calves and cowherd boys and carried them off to another place where he hid them. Based on the principles stated herein, Brahma desired to see further glories of Krishna, and he did indeed witness such glories. The Anucheta continues, hence Brahma's glorification of Krishna as the whole Angi, of which Narayan is but a part, Anga, is not mere eulogy, but the conclusion derived from the natural sense of the episode under discussion. Effectively, this is to say that the witnessing of such glory in others is not possible. In a later verse in the same chapter, it is said, while Brahma looked on, all the cowherd boys immediately appeared to him with dark complexions, like that of a rain cloud, and adorned in yellow silken garments. This and the ensuing verses describe how Brahma directly witnessed the Asvaras from millions of Brahmandas being manifested by Śrī Kṛṣṇa alone as part of his parts. Additionally, each of them were being separately worshipped by Prakriti's primordial potencies, by the metanormal powers such as anima, atomization, the 24 evolutionary principles of Sankhya, beginning with Mahat, cosmic intellect, their supporting factors such as time and innate disposition, Swabhava. The Brahmandas produced out of this conglomeration the creators such as Brahma who were within the Brahmandas and the living beings all the way down to the blades of grass. Jiva Goswami continues, because this episode involves the revelation of the amalgam of all potencies, it indeed forms the extraordinary seed of Sridhar Swami's explanation of the statement, Krishna, however, is Svayaṁ Bhagavān. Other displays of power, such as showing the universal form, are within the capacity of any one of the Purushas, who are immanent each within their own respective universe, Brahmanda. From this, it is to be understood that Sridhar Swami's explanation of the non-distinction, abheda, of the Purusha and Bhagavan in his commentary on verses such as 131 has been presented for the sole purpose of inciting worship, as in the case of the identification of the gross cosmic form, Virat, with the Purusha. In reality, however, Sridhar Swami has accepted Śrī Kṛṣṇa alone as the supreme shelter. as he plainly states at the beginning of his commentary on the 10th canto. So what Jiva's bringing out here is the fact that where we see at the beginning of Swami Pad's commentary, at the beginning of the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto, wherein he's pointing out that the Purusha is Bhagavān. The reason that he's writing in that way in his commentary there should be looked upon as similar to those statements in the various scriptures which point to the Virat conception and give some significance to that Virat Rupa of the Lord for worship by the yogis. So it's an interesting point being made here that Sridhar's making such a statement in his commentary to facilitate the worshipers or those yogis who are inclined to worship the Purusha manifestations of divinity. To give them some encouragement, he's referring to those Purusha manifestations as Bhagavān, just as in other places in Shastra, the Virat Rupa is given some significance as a place to begin worship by such yogis who are so inclined towards that understanding as a stepping stone. It's a necessity in that we have to begin where we are, except under some extraordinary circumstances. And luckily for us, in the worst of ages, Kali Yuga, all these preliminary steps leading to the topmost worship, Anyabilasita sunyam jana karma janavritam, as enunciated by Rupa Goswami, uninterrupted and unmotivated devotion to come immediately to that stage is truly the extraordinary dispensation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But generally speaking, people begin from their understanding, and the understanding is that we see divinity in the world around us, and the beginning yogi to gain appreciation of divinity in the world where he resides, he starts seeing the different manifestations in that world as part of the divine form of the Lord, the Virat Rupa. And he's encouraged to do so, although the form in reality is not an ontological truth. So now Jiva Goswami is going to quote from the Bhavartha Dipika of Sridhar Swami. In other words, from his commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's going to quote directly. He says there in his commentary to the first verse of the 2nd chapter of the 10th canto, I offer obeisance to Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the supreme abode, the refuge of all the cosmos, who is designated by the 9 characteristics known as primary creation, sarga, secondary creation, visarga, and so on. In the 10th canto, Krishna is depicted as the 10th characteristic, the very embodiment of ultimate shelter, ashraya, of all that is sheltered, asrita. He who frolics in the ocean of the Yadu dynasty is called the supreme bliss, Parananda. So this is a statement by Sridhar Swami, wherein he's now commenting on the beginning of the 10th canto, pointing out the fact that of all the 10 subjects presented in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Śrī Kṛṣṇa himself, as he is going to be presented in this 10th canto, is the shelter of all. So many things have been put forth in the other subjects of the major Purana, the Bhagavat Purana, and now we come to the primary subject here. And also for us, we are now coming to the primary subject, Krishna's to Bhagavan Svayaṁ, as led by Sri Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas. So he's completing our Sambandha Gyan, his teachings on Sambandha Gyan in the Sandarbhas here in this fourth one. Jiva continues, if Swamipad's opinion was that other forms of God were also the supreme shelter, then his words in the 10th canto, Krishna is depicted as the 10th characteristic, the very embodiment of ultimate shelter, would be rendered meaningless. Thus, it was rightly said, Narayan is your part. So Jiva concludes this 42nd Anucheta here. And there's a little commentary that we will draw from in concluding our discussion today. It's stated in the commentary by Satyanarayan Das. Brahma describes Narayan as an expansion of Krishna. This is not mere eulogy, as he had just witnessed Narayan manifesting from Krishna a few moments before. The form of Narayan here specifically refers to the second Purusha avatar called Garbhodakshai Vishnu. This episode of the killing of Aghasura and the bewilderment of Brahma, Mohan Lila, forms an important part of the Bhagavat Purana. Brahma's experience amounts to the direct witnessing of the Paribhasa statement under discussion, Krishna's to Bhagavan Svayaṁ. Brahma observed Krishna manifesting innumerable Vishnu forms, an event beyond the capacity of any other avatar or avatāric. So it's being made clear here that this Leela, the Brahma Vimohan Leela, the great bewilderment of Brahma, is truly the quintessential Leela narrative that brings home the Paribhasa Sutra of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Following on verses 1, 3, 1, and 2, Sridhar Swami does not distinguish between the forms of Bhagavan and the Purusha. According to Jiva Goswami, Sridhar's intention in this regard is to incite people to worship the Purusha as Bhagavan. This parallels a scenario illustrated in the second canto, wherein Sri Sukadeva identifies the gross cosmic form Virat with that of the Purusha, doing so merely to provide a tangible basis for meditation. In reality, Sridhar Swami consistently affirms Krishna as the original form of Bhagavan, as has been shown from his numerous citations of the Emperor verse, and as clear in his introductory verses to the 10th canto commentary cited here. The 10th canto is primarily concerned with the Bhagavat's 10th topic, which is called Ashraya, the ultimate shelter. It is obvious that the subject of the 10th canto is Bhagavān Śrī Kṛṣṇa. It is thus to be concluded that the supreme shelter is Krishna alone and not any other form of Bhagavan. This finds support in Brahma's prayers. So some interesting points. Our next discussion will continue with an additional narrative in regards to Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. And this will be the end of the first division of the 4 divisions of Shastric statements in support of the Paribhasa Sutra. And then we will go on to the second division. So the first division has been these magnificent Shastric statements, and the last one that he does quote is very exciting, and I hope you return. If anyone has a question, I will do my best to address it. And if not, I will sincerely thank you for your kind association. Thank you so much. Vanchakalpadusya, Kripasinbevacha, Patitanam Pamanebhyo, Vaishnavijya Namo Namaha.
Dulal Chandra Prabhu ki jai.
Krishna Kirtana Gāna Natana Pano Premamritam Manidhi Dhira Dhira Jana Priyau Priyakarau Nirmasaram Pujitau